the end, we might then whack whatever is left over. So please feel free to comment and question as we go through the session. So just to from the offset, to remind us, as adults, we're all adults here, and adults like to learn in chunks, and they like the information that they learn to be practical. So you will see that what I'm going to share with you is practical. You must go and do it and apply it. Otherwise, it's just information that's sitting useless. We don't do useless information. We know in this day and age, we need to be able to take something and do something about it. So I'm going to cover quite a bit of content, but hopefully you'll find it useful. And really what I want you to think about, what really jumps out at you, because there's probably all of you have areas that you want to focus on, or you've got questions. So think about that while I'm going through it, and then we'll unpack it when we get to the end of the session. So these are the key points I'm going to cover. So these are questions you must plant in your head: how to get ready for that interview, how to prepare for that interview, how to maybe access some of those common questions, because that's a whole myriad, a whole landmine, a whole often it makes people very anxious about what potential questions they can be asked. How do you know what to expect in an interview? Is that even possible? How do you stand out from a crowd, because you're probably competing with thousands of other people in this day and age when it comes to our incredibly high unemployment. So you are competing, full stop. And then obviously we want to be able to walk away at the end of it with that dream job, whatever that might actually be. Okay, so that's what I want to be able to cover in the next hour. This slide, I want to talk through it because I think before we even embark on the details, it's important to acknowledge some stuff. It is scary to, once we've been to the world of studying, to have to go out into the world and face the reality of looking for a job. Okay, so some of you may have never been for an interview before. Some of you may have been through interviews before and have the experience. I think it's so important to go through the process of being interviewed. Even if you don't get the job, remember that in itself is a wonderful learning experience to be interviewed. And it's important because it makes you think about who you are, what you have to offer, and where you want to go. So even if your interview is not successful, reflect on the learnings from that interview. So don't be fearful of it. It is natural to be unsure and uncomfortable about doing something new. But rather see it as the second pick that I've got is of a little boy being curious. But rather see it as, let me be curious and go into this interview to find out more about myself and about the company. And that's a very good philosophy or attitude to have. It helps you to not live in the state of complete anxiety and fear, because for some of you, it can actually be to get so detrimental that your mental and your physical health gets affected before you've even been interviewed. That anxiety peaks, and you can become, I've seen it, you can become physically ill before going for an interview, to such a state that you can't even function. Now, that is not healthy. And that is something you need to work on, because it's just nerves and anxiety about something that hasn't even happened. So psychologists will tell you the best way to handle, I'm going to give you one or two tips, physical tips, but the best way from a thought perspective is to just talk yourself through it when you're feeling anxious about doing something new in general. So what's the story here? Why am I getting so worked up about something that has not even happened? So have a chat to yourself. Chat to yourself first and talk yourself through the journey. And then linked to that is, it is a learning experience. So as with curiosity, go and explore where it takes you. Often I get told, and I'm jumping the gun a bit here, some people get fearful of the interview in case then they are offered the job. So I understand that, because somebody might say, but what do you mean? Why are you anxious about what happens if you get offered the job? Because often it's, well, what happens if there's another job out there? should I accept this, or should I wait, or should I go for another interview? The only time you ever have to make that decision is when you receive an offer letter. When you receive that offer letter in your hands, that's the only time you have to go, right, now I need to either commit or not. So stop worrying about it before that offer letter arrives. Go for as many interviews as you possibly can, and hopefully then offer letters might arrive, and then you have to choose. And that's a wonderful place to be in. But that's, as I said, I'm jumping the gun here because we're talking about the actual process up into and including the interview. A journey, you may have come across this quote before. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Okay, so see that process of preparing and getting ready for an interview as the journey. You don't know where it's going to take you. So see it as an opportunity to go and explore. Do not see it as something that's going to inhibit you, stop you, slow you down, because it's not. For many of you, it's the start of your career, that amazing career that lies ahead of you. So picture that long-term story. Even if your first job ends up not being what you want it to be, it doesn't matter. You're just at the beginning. You're going to get another one. You're going to change companies. You are going to learn from no matter how challenging that job is or not. So it's a lovely mindset. And we call it, in learning and development, we call it a growth mindset. You actually have a growth mindset towards your future. Do not live in fear. Do not allow the fear to define you and to hold you back. So just some T's and C's here, some commentary around the types of interviews before we even look at the preparation. So there's more, but these are the key ones that I want to focus on. When you're actually interviewed, there's normally a round of interviews you go through. And the bigger the company, the more interviews you tend to have. So if you're going through an employment agency, there's a screening. You might be screened by the employment agency itself, and then they will forward your CV, and then you might be interviewed by the company. Now, that is where you don't actually know. You can ask whether it's going to be a one-on-one interview, a panel interview, or a virtual interview. Virtual interviews are becoming more and more common. Many companies don't even bother with an in-person interview anymore. But you can certainly ask, if you're going through an employment agency, you can say, when I'm interviewed, will it be a one-on-one, and will it be a panel interview? Now, panel interviews often terrify people because they envisage this image of you sitting and there's a whole lot of people in front of you throwing questions at you. You're treated exactly the same way. So some companies like it, not to be cruel, not to intimidate you, but from an interviewer's perspective, it's actually more beneficial to have more than one person in an interview. Because why? Because we're different beings. So you might often have what they call a subject matter expert, or the interviewing manager, or you might have someone from HR. So they see it differently. The HR person will cover all the HR issues, and the hiring manager will cover the specifics of the job. That's why you often have two people in a panel interview, and they may ask you different types of questions, and they will interpret your responses differently. So don't be intimidated by a panel interview. Just see it as a one-on-one interview with two people. So that's what's happening, or more. So if you've got any questions on that, please pop them in. So let's start with the preparation. This is before it even begins. So you have come across a role, you've seen it on social media, someone has forwarded to you. In the olden days, you see it in a newspaper. I see some companies still advertise in the newspaper, but online is normally where you're going to source this role. Whether it's a graduate position or it's a full-time role, you have the world as your oyster. You can go and search for yourself. You can sign up with every employment agency that you wish to and upload your CV. So research, when I say research is important if you know where you're going to be interviewed, research that company. Why do I say that? Because it gives the interviewer great insight into your ability to show an interest. How's that? But just by searching up on that company, it will make you feel more content. You will have a better understanding of what they do. You will know, hopefully, find out on their site, because your generation, most of you fall into the generation X, I'm sorry, Y or Z, and it's very important to understand the company's values and what they stand for. Do I want to work for this company? Environmentally, what do they offer? Social responsibility. You can find that on a good website, which you maybe can use as a question. And we'll come back to when you're going to ask questions later. But it is wonderful, and I, as an interviewer, feel great respect and encouragement when I meet someone that I'm interviewing that knows something about my company, because I'm employing you because I love where I work, and it would be nice if you showed some interest in my job. What you can also do is you can rehearse, so you can practice. Okay, you know who you are, hopefully by now, the type of person that you are. Some of us are more spontaneous. Some of us like to be very thorough and detailed. So if you're a thorough and detailed person, or whether you are spontaneous, it's good to rehearse. And you can use, there's AI to use now. There's some amazing AI options. You can have another human being in front of you pretending to be the interviewer, and you can practice specifically questions around maybe your CV and your story at the end of the day. Find out what it takes to walk into your next interview. So that's exactly what I've been talking about. And we'll talk further about being confident and sure of yourself, because there's some amazing tips there I can also and guide you on. But from a preparation, you would have hopefully, well, not hopefully, you obviously did something right, because your CV met the minimum requirements. That's why you are being asked to come in for interviews. That's a great sign. Okay, you're ready somewhere. You've ready ahead of a whole lot of other people that got rejected. So just the mere fact that you are interviewed is wonderful. It's a big tick next to your name that you got through that screening process. So remember that. Acknowledge it and own it. As I've said, prep is key. This is in most things in life, we need to prepare better, and we don't. We rush through preparation. So know your CV, know your story. What is your story? I don't know. Your story is your story. We all have our own story, and we need to own those stories. Remember, as humans, we love stories. So see your CV as a story. And often I get asked, but what happens if I've never worked before? Well, I always say, and I know you're going to cover CVs in a separate session. I always say that whatever you've done, put it in your CV, whether you volunteered, whether you worked in a spaza shop, whether you worked in retail as a cashier, as a waiter, whether you worked at catering functions, put it in your CV. If you had no formal work experience, because once again, what is that showing? It is showing that you have made an attempt to give to society, to earn some money, to get out of bed maybe, and not sit at home all day on your phone or watching Netflix. So think about past roles that you might have done that you thought, that's not important, because it's got nothing to do with, often the question I get, but it's got nothing to do with my role that I'm applying for. It doesn't have to. It's just showing that you have the capabilities and the ability, that you're willing and able to work. Think of it that way. So when I see a CV that someone's taken some efforts to get some part-time work in their life while they were studying, and doesn't, as I said, does not have to be related to what you do, that immediately there's a tick next to their name. I'm prepared to explore that further with somebody. can see the questions are flying through. It's fantastic. So, right, we're still doing the preparation before the interview. Know your audience. As I said, get to find out more about the company. How do you do that? You can ask the company. You can ask the employment agent. You can do your own research. Okay, so that's your audience. Anticipate interview questions. Oh, if only we had a magic wand, eh? If only we had a magic wand. Chat GPT is very helpful here. So you can ask Chat GPT or Copilot to give you some top questions, because you will probably find, and what my research has always shown me, that the same sort of questions get churned out by most organizations. And ideally, what's going to happen, let me let you into a little secret here. Companies that are organized and structured would have created a job description for the role, okay, that you're applying for, so they know what the role entails, and sometimes they even share that with you, and you can even ask for that. So that's another question you can ask for even beforehand. The advert sometimes gives you a limited, often they either give you a limited breakdown of the role, or they sometimes give you the full detail of the role, so that gives you some insight to the question that you're going to be asked. So think about exactly how you're going to tackle that, instead of going and they're completely unsure of what you're going to get. As I said, there's no exact science here. Know your CV, get to know some general questions around what could be asked, and I might share a few of those if we have time at the end. Then pack and dress accordingly. What does that mean? Because often the question I get, how do you know what to wear to an interview? Good question. In the past, previous generations, those baby boomers and those X's, they dress smart. You must dress in a full-on suit, and the ladies must wear smart outfits. And guess what? It's very much about the company culture. So part of your research is to find out what people wear. Do not think that because you wear a suit, they're going to love you. I'll share a story with you. So in Mr. Price Group, they're very informal and casual. So if you arrive with a suit, immediately they're saying in their head, which they shouldn't because they're supposed to be objective, they're going, this person doesn't look aligned from a dress perspective to our space, because it looks like they're a bit sort of stuffy, stuck up, formal. And we're an informal company, so maybe they won't work out here. So you see, watch out for that. At the other extreme, arriving in your baggies, t-shirts, and slops for an interview at a bank, or Capitec maybe, but at F&B Standard Bank, then they're going to have the same approach and attitude towards you, because they're going to say, who is this informal being coming to work in my environment, which is professional and smart? So once again, ask the interviewer, the employment agent or the person that's phoned you for the interview, what the appropriate dress would be, but also do your own research around that. So there's no hard and fast rule. Old school thinking, as I said, was you must dress in a suit and a tie. It doesn't work like that. Be very aware of who your audience is and who your company is. Get your head in the right space. I've spoken about that. And one of the best things you can do is breathe. You know that. Let me tell you quickly about breathing. So when we breathe, we take in oxygen, obviously. When we're anxious and nervous, we don't breathe deeply. We get stressed. Okay. Why do we get stressed? Because we're not taking in oxygen, and then our heart rate goes up. And you know what happens to your brain? You become stupid. Yes, I used that word because science tells us when we're stressed and anxious, there's a lack of oxygen in our brain, and that's why we can't think or make a decision. And that is why sometimes we battle to even communicate. Guess what happens when you can't think for yourself in an interview and ask you a question and you can't answer it? It's because you've got no oxygen in your brain. Okay, so reflect on that. How do you repair that? You breathe. So before you go into the interview, if you're really feeling nervous and anxious, go into the bathroom. Okay. Stand in front of the mirror or sit on the toilet and take in deep, deep breaths. Not shallow ones, a deep one. You can Google these techniques. They're all out there. It's called 4 square breathing is one of them. Breathe in, hold, and then breathe out again slowly. What does that do? It reduces your heart rate, slows it down. It brings oxygen to your brain, which calms you down and makes you clever. See, it's not so many times we negate and we decide that these things are going to help us. But often it's the simplest of things that we can apply and we can try out to help us better improve our offering. And that's what I mean by getting your head in the right place. There's a researcher called Amy Cuddy that you might want to Google and come across. So Amy Cuddy has done research on confidence and how we can actually convince ourselves to be more confident when we're not. And what you do, you stand in front of a mirror and they're called power poses. Standing in front of the mirror, looking at yourself in the mirror, making yourself bigger, hands on hips. I wish you could see me. My hands on my hips, standing up, even lifting your arms up like that and like that. Psychologically, how's this? It creates a hormone that allows you to be more confident. So you're not taking a pill, you're not drinking energy out of an energy can, okay, because that's dangerous. You're creating your own energy levels by just standing in a mirror and forming these power poses. That's why I find science fascinating. So you are creating your ability to feel more confident. How's that? So remember that one. Amy Cuddy is the person that you want to look up on that topic. I'll see if we can add it to the questions at the end. Impress your interviewer. Ace those common questions. Hey, don't be caught off guard. Common questions asked. How to craft a response. Well, sounds like hard work, yeah. You need to be you. Okay. And I've got a lovely quote at the end to help you. Don't try and get fancy. And I've seen it many times. Don't try and memorize a statement or a fancy quote, because that's going to make you very stressed. Don't remember it. Don't try and use fancy language to try and impress, because your authenticity will be your inauthenticity will be noticed. So we've all become very clever since COVID. We're becoming more aware of what's real and what's not real, and we don't like unreal stuff. Okay. It will come out clearly in an interview if you're not being real. So don't pretend, okay, to know stuff that you don't know. And don't try and sound clever by using fancy words. Just use common language. Okay. Court of God might be being asked a question you don't have an answer to. It's fine. Just say, I can't think of an example now, but can we come back to it later? How's that? Okay, you're taking ownership. A good interviewer will acknowledge that you can't always come up with a quick example. I'm going to give you a concept now that some companies use and some companies don't. It's called competency-based interviewing. And what that means is they're going to ask you a question around a competency or a skill that they're looking for. For example, teamwork. They want to see when you're being interviewed, are you good at teamwork or, let's say, conflict? So they will say to you, a competency-based question is a question that's going to get you to give them a story. So they're actually lovely, because a competency-based question will make you think of a story that you have experienced. So let me give you an example. A competency-based question for conflict would be like, please, can you give me an example when you have had to deal with conflicts? Now, if you've never worked before, you can use any life experience where you have dealt with conflict. So you may talk about at home with your siblings. in your on the field, if you're a soccer player, for example, when you were a student studying, where you had to deal with conflict in some way, because none of us get through life without conflict. That is what the interviewer is looking for. They want to hear a story. So you don't need to make it up. Think about your life. It does not have to be a work-related. First prize is, yes, a work-related one, if you've had some work-related answer. But if you do not, it is fine. And you can say, I don't have a work-related specific answer, but let me tell you about my home life. Oh, it's sounding like more and more like you, like a human. Because isn't that what we're looking for? Yeah, I know AI is coming to get us all, but they're looking for humans. Okay. Common questions asked. Oh, as I said, there's a myriad. ChatGPT, Copilot, ask them. Oh, they'll give you some lovely ones. Very common ones are normally, tell me about your, give me a brief summary of your CV. Tell me about where you see yourself in a couple of years. That's a nasty one. What's your 5 to 10 year plan? Oh, it's a horrible question, but they still churn them out. Just be real. Just say things like, I want to grow and learn and get better and be exposed to everything that I have, that your company offers, because you're not coming up with some outlandish, like, I'm going to be the MD, or the worst one, I would like your job. Okay. So linked to that is crafting a response. And once again, be you. Okay. If you don't have an answer, don't make one up, because you get caught out. I promise you, we'll catch you out. That interviewer will catch you out at some stage. Don't have an answer? So I don't have an answer now. I can't think of an exact example. Can we come back to it? That's what you say if you don't have an answer. Or say, I've never come across that before. I do not know that model or that term or that concept. Can you enlighten me? How's that? Because what does the interviewer see? They're seeing you taking some ownership here. They're seeing honesty. They're seeing realness. They're seeing authenticity. They are not seeing someone that's trying to avoid or come up with tall stories, which are stories that aren't true. Another lovely question they love to ask is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Whoa, that one. Be prepared for that one. So how do you answer that one? Don't say, I can't think of any weaknesses. Most interviewees will tell you about their strengths, which are often quite boring. So I'm good with people. That's so vague. But actually, what your interviewer is really looking for is, I want to see how honest you are about your weaknesses. And a nice way to answer that question is to say, I like to see them as developmental areas, things that I need to develop in. Because everybody has strengths and weaknesses. So don't say, I don't have any weaknesses. I don't know. Okay, this is where it's a bit risky here, because you actually have to give them something. So think about what will I give them? What do I know? You could maybe say you sometimes you like to work on lots of things at the same time. And because of that, you get distracted. But what you've learned to do is to learn to focus. It's better to do one thing at a time, but you can have the tendency to do a lot of things at a time, and that distracts you. So what you're saying, you're admitting, but you're also saying, well, I'll put a remedy in place to help me. So always, if you're going to talk about a weakness, then have a remedy in place. So sometimes it might be, also be selective, because we can't say, well, I have a weakness and then I like to steal money, because I don't know how you're going to remedy yourself for that one, and try and explain how you're going to get out of that one if you're applying for a financial role, because that's probably problematic. Okay. Another one, let's think of another weakness that we could have. You could be very empathetic. In other words, you always assisting and helping other people. Now, that's a strength and a weakness, because we know that's the number one leadership skill, is to show empathy. And It's a power, it's a human skill. So do some research around human and power skills. Bring those into your answers and your questions and your discussions. Okay. So empathy is one of those. So you can say empathy is my strength, but it can also be my weakness. Because if you're too empathetic and you don't set up boundaries, guess what happens? You burn out because you give, and you don't look after yourself, and you can't even get your own job done because you're helping everybody else. So I say that's I'm intentionally working on boundaries. That's a lovely answer to give. I always say to interviewees, always talk about boundaries. Somewhere bring in boundaries that you're working on getting better at boundaries, and boundaries are necessary, and that you're on a journey to get better. And another nice answer to always throw in our statement is a work in progress. So you can say, I am striving for this, I'm not there, but it's a work in progress. I'm working towards it. No, you could be asked a personal question about, what do you like to do outside of the work environment? That's another good example. And there you can say, I like reading or swimming or gardening. I'm trying to exercise more, but that's a work in progress because I want to start running marathons, but I'm only at the stage now of walking. But it's a work in progress. So immediately I'm going, this person's real. They're not saying to me, I'm running the Comrades Marathon next week. Okay, that's my goal, because that's not reliable, not achievable. So don't make these outlandish statements that are out of the reach of most people. And this is a gentle joke, perhaps, in what you're trying to say. There we spoke about breathing. Okay, breathe all the time. Remember, it's going to give you the energy to carry on and to calm down and to think clearly. And I like this because, as I said right in the beginning, you got a story. Everybody's got a story. So tell your story. So see those questions that you're being asked as prompting you to tell your story. So don't see your CV as a list of facts. Take those facts and turn them into a story. Take your strengths, turn them into a story. Take your past experience, if you've got it, turn it into a story, because it humanizes you. That is my secrets that I'm sharing with you. Stay human, stay real. Right. So expectations, how to meet, how to exceed, going above and beyond in the interview. So I think we've covered a lot of this already. Being real, being you, being authentic, admitting when you don't understand something. A lot of times I get questions when you talk about salary. It should come from the interviewer. They should be saying to you, what are your expectations for this role? How much are you expecting to be paid for this role? And there's always the debate is out. There's pros and cons of whether you should ask. But I'm like, hell yes, because if they're not going to tell me in the interview, then I might be so excited about this role, and eventually they send me the offer letter, and I'm so upset, I'm so disillusioned, I'm so disappointed because it's not what I was expecting. So you have to be brave and bold. As I said, a good interviewer is going to say to you, this is the broad range in which we are prepared to pay you, between 20 and 40,000 Rand. That's the bracket. Are you comfortable with that? Now, that's a good statement from an interviewer. Because then immediately in your head, you go, oh, yeah, I've got figures I'm happy with that. The lowest, I don't want to be paid the lowest, but also that means potentially I could be paid that much. So if they don't ask, you can raise it. So please, when will there be some indication of how much I will be paid? Do not be afraid to ask that question, because you have a right to. You are entitled to ask that question, because you are choosing whether you're going to join this company or not. So remember that. Just phrase it without being insulting, rude, cocky, in your face. So we haven't spoken about salary yet. When will give the person space? Say, when will we be able to talk about the salary range? There we go. Got it. Another important thing is to find out when you will be informed. Because I've had that in my life where I went for an interview and never again did I hear a thing. For the rest of my life, I'm still waiting for someone to phone me and say, "Hey, you got the job, David." It's very disrespectful for a company not to. Okay. Often in the adverts, they'll say, if you apply and you haven't heard from us from 2 weeks, legally they have to do this, then deem your interview into your application as unsuccessful. But if they interview you, they should be ethically, morally contacting you and saying, "Well done, you got it," or "Sorry for you, you never got it." And you're entitled to ask why. Do you know that? Why are you asking why? So that you can learn from it, okay? To maybe do or not do something next time. Or there might have just been somebody that was better than you or had more requirements met than you did at the end of the day. So you can't get angry with a company because they didn't employ you. I always say it was probably a good sign, because if you think you interviewed well and didn't get the job, well, it's their loss, isn't it? It's their loss that they chose some other fool, and that there are other opportunities out there for me, and I'm not going to become despondent and disillusioned. I'm allowed to maybe have a little cry or a little moan, but I need to dust myself off, pick myself up, and start again. Because statistically, you're going to get rejection letters. Don't be all shocked and horrified when somebody rejects your CV, or you go for an interview, you don't get the job. Okay, that's life. I do a lot of research and work on empathy and compassion. And part of being a human is to be humble. So humility means I'm no less than or no greater than another human being. Okay, common humanity means that we all go through pain and suffering. We can't escape it. You haven't done something wrong. It's meant to happen. So do you see how that changes your mindset? We must expect it, and we need to move on from it. That's what resilience is. It's saying, I was turned down, didn't get the job. I'm allowed to be sad. I'm allowed to feel, because we like to feel feelings. But I can't stay there and be miserable. I need to pick myself up, and I need to move on and get going. Wonderful thing to do here is whenever you go for an interview, a day or two later, probably the next day, send a note of thanks. Send a note of thanks to, if you've got the contact details, or you will have the contact details of the agent, for example, send them a note. Thank them for the opportunity. Thank them for setting this up and hoping that you'll hear from them. If you have contact details for the company and the person that interviewed, the hiring manager, mail them. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. And you need to say that when you finish your interview too. When the interview is over, say thank you for the opportunity. And then it's important to ask questions. Not 100 questions about the company. So often the interviewer at the end will say to you, "Do you have any questions?" Always have something waiting. You might often get your question from the interview. So you might realize there's something that needed to be clarified. I'm going to ask them a question. But you know what? One of the best things to ask companies is to ask them about their culture. If it hasn't come up, ask them about, because it's very important to your generation. Ask them about work-life blend. Ask them about flexibility. Use the word flexibility, because companies use different terminology. Working from home. The other word they like to hybrid. Use flexibility. So what is how flexible is this role? working hours, working from home, working in the office, hours of work. Those are good questions to ask. And look at this second point. After the interview, you must go treat yourself. Pat yourself on the back. Remember, you got screened, your CV got through, well done, and you've got an interview, well done. We don't know yet what the outcome is, but it can be quite emotionally draining. So don't be surprised after an interview that you feel exhausted. You might feel emotional. You might feel tired. You know what? That's normal. You also might feel completely energized and inspired. We're all unique beings, depending on the interview. Don't go analyzing paralyzing because, some of you, what's a problem? You go like those of you who, when you wrote the tests and then you finished the exam and you took the exam paper questions and you went to every single paper, every single question to see how many marks you think you got. No, it's gone, it's dusted. Okay, that interview, the exam is finished, the interview is finished. So don't sit there and beat yourself up and go, I can't believe I did. It's done. It's done, it's dusted. Okay. Standing out from the crowd. I've been speaking a lot here. Hey? I think we have spoken about all of this, making a lasting impression, okay, because you were you. That in itself should make someone memorable. We can't suddenly do something that's going to make us pop out unless you've got a hat on your head or you're wearing a big bouquet. I don't know. Just being you is going to leave a memorable mark. I can assure you. If you're real, if you're authentic, if you bring energy, that's a good point. I needed to remind you, bring energy too. Don't be flat. Don't be non-communicative in an interview. Because what is the interviewer seeing? Oh, this person's got no energy. They've got nothing to say. And they're definitely going to judge you for that in inverted commas. So stick with your personality. Don't be something that you're not. But you don't have to be flat and energyless. No personality is flat and energyless because that's going to really give the company an opportunity to think that you're not going to be the right fit for the organization. Be the one that never got away. Okay. So yes, as I said, in a perfect world, when we get interviewed, we get the job, but we don't live in a perfect world. Okay. And it might have nothing to do with you that you didn't get the job, or it might have had something that you failed to do. And if you ask why, hopefully you'll get some insight into that. And now I want to be able to answer all your thousands of questions that have been flooding the question and answer. But I want to just end off with this quote. Some of you may know a famous author called Dr. Seuss. And I think this you must take a photograph of. And just before you go in for your interview, you look at this image. And it says, today, you are you. That is truer than true. There's no one alive who is youer than you. So that is a wonderful way to remind yourself that with all my flaws and faults and maybe my anxiety, my inexperience, and I'm competing against so many other people that look like they're cleverer, smarter than me, if I remind myself of what Dr. Seuss says, that will give you some impetus to be able to go forth and conquer that interview. Cool. That's me. Have we got some questions waiting?
There is one question that I want to pose to everyone, which I'm going to send out the poll. But with everything that David said, do you feel like if you took everything that he taught you and you got your dream job interview, do you think you'd be ready for your dream job interview? You guys can answer in the poll, yes or no. But allow yourself to just answer that. But David, thank you so much for just imparting all your knowledge and all your insight in terms of expertise. And also, like, I think one thing we forget that when we go into an interview, we need to show ourselves as much as the company is showing us them. You know, we get so caught up in, oh, what do they want? What do they want to see? What will make me get hired? But it's like maybe just being yourself might allow you to get to that point. Not even maybe being yourself is what will allow you to get to that point. So I think that's awesome that you highlighted that and just spoke onto that specifically, that answer the question the best way that you can answer it, not being fancy, not being all of that. The questions are loading now, so I'm going to start with the first question. The first question is from Anonymous. With the different interviews, does it influence my chance of being selected?
So can you repeat that again?
It says, with different interviews, does it influence my chance of being selected?
In meaning different interviews in the type of interviews?
Yeah, I think so.
Not necessarily, because you in a panel interview, you're going to get more people giving feedback to decide whether you are the suitable person. So it's better, as I said, in one way, because otherwise, if it's a one-on-one interview, you've got one person making that call on your whole life. How's that? And that's we all a bit subjective. Eh? We all have tendencies. So the more people you have in an interview, as interviewers, the better it is because you've got more objectivity. Put it that way.
So awesome. And then the next question is from Lena. If one had the first interview and it was a success, how can you find out what the next interview will be about? Can I ask them what it would be about?
What normally happens with the second interview is they'll bring in another person. So the second interview is normally the person, like you're getting closer and closer to the person you're going to work with. So they're ready. The fact that you're going to go to the second interview, it's not going to be about necessarily about what's in that interview. It's in most cases just the next person closer to who is going to employ you is going to ask you some questions to see if you're a correct match for their space. Often with a second interview, you have to then, depending on the role, they often will ask you some sort of presentation. So it then gets specific to the role, whereas the first round of interview may be just to getting to know you, whether you meet all the criteria, whether you're going to be suitable for the role. And then they really want to dig down a little deeper to find out whether you are the right match for the role. So asking is no problem asking, okay? But as I said, in most cases, they should be getting to do something to meet the requirements. Okay. And yeah, you quite and a good company and a good agent and a good interviewee is going to tell you, they're going to say to you, this interview is going to be with the hiring manager, or they are also obliged morally and ethically to give you time to prepare for that interview, whatever that might be, if it's a presentation. Because gone are the days where they used to do these, and I think some companies still do it, but it's totally unacceptable. It's not illegal. They call it stress interview, where they're trying to put you under pressure to see whether you will cope. And science has disproved that logic completely, because that's not natural. And when we're put under pressure, we don't function effectively anyway. So it's a ridiculous thing to do, to start judging people before they even work for you. So actually, if someone was doing it for me, I'd go, actually, I don't want to work here. Thanks very much. Have a nice life. But often we get excited because it's a big brand or something. We're like, oh God, I want to work for them. We're prepared to put up with what they do to us, but that's personal. You decide that one. No one's going to tell you what to do.
Awesome, thank you. And the next question is, what might be the problem if you are applying on a regular basis but not scoring interviews? CV revamped and 5 months for experience, put in brackets.
Oh, good one. So yes, it could be a number of things. Okay. It could be that there's nothing wrong. It's just that it's not meant for you. But I wouldn't just leave it there, because I would do some reflection, and I would also, get someone else knowledgeable to check my CV, because we have such a myriad of different weird and wonderful CVs out there, templates. And it could be, as we spoke about earlier, it could be that it's just so confusing, or maybe you're leaving out important stuff. So it's always good to check in with a knowledgeable person, expert in that CV space. And there are lots of people that can do it for you, that can rewrite CVs for you. It's not difficult, but sometimes we just miss out some key elements and key components. But from the interview process, that's where it's a little more tricky, because we may not actually be interviewing well. So that's where we need to ask for feedback if we don't get the job, because maybe that will give you some insight into what you're missing. And also personally, you must think about, how did I feel after that interview? Did I feel, what was I feeling? Did I feel confident? Did I feel uncertain? Did I feel exhausted? Why am I feeling exhausted? So just ask yourself questions around, if you can't get feedback from the company, ask yourself questions about, what am I contributing to? Is there something that I'm contributing? Or actually, it may not be. It may simply be nature, luck, the story of my life, that for whatever reason it ain't meant to be. So I don't necessarily think there's something wrong, but I would still do the reflection. Absolutely.
100%. Wait, before we continue, we are limited in time, so we'll answer 2 more questions. But one question here that I'll just quickly answer is, how can I structure my CV so I can land an interview, as I've applied online and hand delivered, but never been called for an interview? The year is almost over and no interview. So Nomvula, what I will tell you is that we are having a session centered around how you can structure your CV, which will be in November, which is part of mastering the job hunt. It's part of what we've done today. It's just the part 2 of it, of how you can do your CV. But I think David and I earlier were speaking about, make sure that your CV is clear in terms of what you're trying to show the employer. If specifically looking at even something as simple as your name, where you put your name, where you put your email address. Because you might find, cool, you have all this stuff, but you didn't put your email address, or you didn't put your cell phone number, which is, it's very small things, but it's things that can get in the way. Then there's no way to contact you, so then we're going to move on to the next person. But then when putting down volunteering, being clear that this is volunteer work, and putting down what volunteer work you did, when you did it, when you started, when it ended, where you did it, and points of what key responsibilities you had when you were volunteering, or when you were a student leader, or those different avenues. And then knowing that, okay, this is work experience, this is the work experience I've had. I worked as a cashier. My responsibilities included interacting with customers on a daily basis, restocking what is it? I want to say cupboards, but I know it's not cupboards. But restocking the shelves, and also scanning the stock as well.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly. And you can even say something, saying like a goal that you had, like, I was employee of the month in March, or I had the opportunity to work with the manager on this project, and making those things clear, just so that even you yourself, when you read your CV, is it clear to me when I'm reading it? If someone else gave me that CV, would I understand it as well? But that is also something that we will touch on in that. But David, I'm sure you can also give your insight on that as well.
No, you explained that very nicely. Yeah? And you don't need to put your grade 2 attendance certificate for being the kid that smiled the most in grade 2, and your attached to your CV, because that's very sweet, but that was a long time ago. And yeah, it's not relevant. But as I said, be very clear about what you have done in your work experience, with dates. And I have come across CVs tragically where, as you said, there's no phone number and there's no email address. Tragic, because now we can't contact you. Okay, so yeah, just sometimes just remember the basics. Just keep it simple. Clear.
And the last question, which I can also group with the other question that one of the questions that was there. It's greetings. I hope you're well. Would you say it is wise to use an academic CV for interviews to score a job, or is consideration on strict experience basis? I ask this with the consideration of the crisis on skills transfer from inexperienced youth. So I'm assuming that the question is, on your CV, do you use like your academic experience on that CV? Like, can it be considered to be work, if I'm not mistaken? And one of the questions also, like, the reason why I want to tie this, they're saying, as someone that is applying for jobs as a student and is inexperienced, what must I do if I'm constantly being rejected? So, yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes. So I think adding as anything that you have been doing that is going to provide insight to who you are and what you have achieved is important, especially if you don't have any job work specific outside of academia experience, then you need to put that in there. If that's what you got, that's what you got. I think that's, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
I think what I would say is it's important to highlight that when you are studying, you are learning skills. Like, you have research skills, and you wouldn't think that because it's like, oh, I have to go and do this and I have to do that. You might find you know a system that not a lot of people know. You know how to do Excel, you know how to use Canva, you know how to use different systems that you don't think, oh, this would help me with work, but it's actually something you're using at school. If you are coding, you can put what language you know. If you know JavaScript, C#, those different things. And even if it's like a hobby that you're doing, you can actually list that as like part of your CV, like hobbies, coding, this language, or even like putting down like, okay, maybe you've volunteered at church or different spaces that you're in. Everything that you've done, you've learned a specific skill. Whether you can identify it or not, I think that's what's important, identifying what skills you have learned in the space that you're in. If you have studied anything you've studied, you're going to do research. You're going to use different platforms outside of just Word, outside of Excel, and even Excel. Excel is a brilliant skill to have. Like, it's difficult. It's not easy to use Excel, and being able to be like, I am intermittently efficient with Excel. And also just listing like, okay, I have good writing skills, good communication skills, and someone that does humanities, how to craft a good essay. You have to do that. I wouldn't say job, but it's part of your degree. And that is a skill. You have writing skills as well. When you do engineering, there's so many different systems you guys are using, especially if you have to draw a building, if you have to, and also even like logic, like logistics, things like that. Look at what you're currently studying and list like, okay, when I write an essay, I have to do research. I have to be able to understand the literature that I'm doing. I have to, there's different things that you already have skills that you might not think are skills because it's something you have to do every day. So I think about, even if you have time in the day when you're doing your CV and in your skills section and you have your like academia and stuff, put down the skills you've learned during your academic progression. What have you learned? And if you don't know, literally sit and be like, okay, when I study, what do I have to do? What are specific things that I have to do that might actually be a skill? And that might actually that one skill that you might think, oh, I do this every day, it's nothing. That one skill might be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's see what they have to say. Let's see what this person can bring to the table. Because we tend to undermine what we have done already. So yeah, I think that's all I can add from my side.
Spot on. I think that skill is key, because that's what companies are looking for. They're looking for, as much as we are first connected by your qualification, it's the skills they're looking for. And they say you might find that skill in something that you did that you think, oh, it's so insignificant, unimportant. But trust me, that's where we often find different skills, and that's how we get to know you better.
Exactly.
Who is this person? Oh, and we see by your hobbies, by your interests, that's telling me a whole lot about your skills. And I've got one last parting bit of advice: is just do online stuff, do online courses, and same thing, because it's linked to your skill. So if there are, and yes, there are online courses that you pay for, but there are thousands that are for free. Just do them and add them to your CV. Things that interest you, things that are related to what you have studied or not, because once again, it's a skill that you're looking for, and that will often, they'll pick on those often in an interview. Go, oh, I see you've done an online course on coding, even though you're applying to be a vet. I'm telling you, those are what makes a good interviewer search around your CV looking for these nuggets to find out more about you.
100%. And sometimes you forget even social media, how you utilize social media. That's a skill as well. We need to look at the everyday things that we're doing that will make you stand out in terms of skills. And there's free courses everywhere. There's Coursera, there is Udemy. Even Google has a lot of free courses that you can do free. And not all of them you'll get the certificates, because that's also part of
yes.
that you want to get the certificate.
Yeah.
But that is now a new skill that you have.
Yeah.
And that you can put down. And even with your hobbies, I think it shows that you're adaptable. And all people really want is someone that's keen to learn. Someone that's keen to learn and grow, because whenever you get a job, you will make mistakes, and you should be able to take those mistakes and work with them and know that I'm learning. I'm in the space because I need to learn. And the only way you can become better is by having that mindset of I need to learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I have to say. All I can say is thank you so much, David, for being here today. I know we ran over time, but thank you so much for giving us so much knowledge, giving us a lot to laugh about as well, and just being able to see the humanity in getting into the job first, in the job force, looking for that job, getting in that interview, and understanding that we shouldn't put so much pressure when it comes to that interview, and that we're all just trying to do the best that we can when we are in those spaces. So thank you so much. Thank you for imparting knowledge. And guys, this session will be recorded. All it is recorded, and it will be shared with you guys. The past 3 webinars, we will be putting on a post-comms webinar for you, or not webinar, post-comms later, for you guys to be able to access the presentations and the recording, so that you guys have access to both at your free time. If you want to watch the recording, if you want to go through the presentations as well, there is also notes on the presentation on some of them. So you guys also have the chance to look at that as well. But that will be shared with you next week. So just keep it out on your emails. Guys, if you have a question, just put it in the Q&A, because I can't bring you to speak out your questions. But thank you so much, David. I hope you have a great Friday. I hope you guys enjoyed today's session. I know I did. And I'll see you guys at part 4 for Beyond Boundaries Masterclass.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.